Welcome to Coach Eichner's Math. Today we'll be talking about special right triangles. In this case, 45, 45, 90 triangles, which have side lengths that are x, x, and 2x, x radical 2, respectively, and 30, 60, 90 triangles that have side lengths of x, x radical 3, and 2x, respectively. So, today, you will have to determine, is it a 45, 45, 90 or a 30, 60, 90, and then you're going to have to use the proper rule. Let's go ahead and look on example number 1. Find the diagonal of a square, the length of the diagonal of a square is 8 radical 2. So go ahead and draw yourself a picture of a square. We know that the diagonal is 8 radical 2. Find the length of one side of the square. Well, in order to find the length, we're going to have to use our special right triangles. Now, if you think about it, what do I know about a square? It has 90-degree angles. So as I draw my diagonal, I've really created myself a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And we know that the hypotenuse is 8 radical 2. So as I label my triangle, we know the two legs are going to be x and x, and the hypotenuse is x radical 2. So looking at it from there, let's go ahead and look at our formula. 8 radical 2 equals x radical 2. Divide both sides by the radical. 8 would equal x. X in this case would be the sides of my square. That would be your answer. Let's look down at example number 2. The length of one side of an equilateral triangle is 11. Find the length of the altitude. Now, if you remember, if I have an equilateral triangle, I'm going to have 3 sides. They're all going to be congruent. So if this side's 11, this side would be 11, and this side would be 11. So if I draw my altitude, what's important about the altitude is this is a 90-degree angle. Notice the altitude is also going to cut my base in half, which makes this 5.5 and this 5.5. Before I do anything else, I should be able to look on and say that I believe that is a 30, 60, 90. But in case you don't believe that, let's figure out why. An equilateral triangle is the same as an equiangular triangle. So as I'm looking at it, all of these angles are 60 until I drew my altitude, which cut it into 30 and 30. So I have a 30, I have a 60, and I have a 90. I know that the hypotenuse is 11, which is a long side, which we know is 2x. I know that the short side is x, and I know the altitude in this case is x radical 3. So, from here, I know that 11 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2, and you're going to find that 5.5 equals x. Unfortunately, on this one, we're not looking for x. We're looking for the altitude, which is x radical 3. So I would say 5.5 times the radical 3. And that would be my answer for example number 2. Let's look down at example number 3. The perimeter of a square is 40 centimeters. Find the length of the diagonal. My suggestion to you is to pause the video at this time and attempt to do this problem on your own. All right, welcome back. Looking at it, the perimeter of a square is 40 centimeters. So I have 4 sides to my square, so 40 divided by 4 would tell me each side is going to be 10. Because we know it's a square, it must be a 45, 45-90 triangle. So I know that my exterior edges are all going to be x, and my hypotenuse would be x radical 2. So in this case, if x equals 10, x radical 2 would equal 10 radical 2. And that would be the length of your diagonal. Example number 4. This time they haven't given us any words to look at. Instead, they've marked two angles, or two sides as congruent. The benefit for us is we know since the sides are congruent, the angles must also be, which makes it a 45, 45, 90. So 6 is our hypotenuse, which is x radical 2. UG and BG are both x. So they want to find both of those. So I'd say that x radical 2 equals 6. Okay. Our first step is going to be to divide by the radical 2. So x equals 6 divided by the radical 2. Now, at this point, if you remember the shortcut that I showed you in prior videos, you're more than welcome to use it. Otherwise, we have to rationalize this by getting rid of the square root in the denominator. We're going to multiply by the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2. 6 times the square root of 2 is 6 square roots of 2. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 2 squared. Well, the square and the square root cancel, so I can say 6 radical 2 divided by 2. Well, 6 divided by 2 is just 3, and I can't forget to keep my square root. So if I had remembered my shortcut, when I was at 6 divided by radical 2, I could have done my shortcut where I said 6 divided by the number of my radical times the radical itself, and said 6 divided by 2 is 3, times square root of 3 is 3 square roots of 2. Just like that, I would have gotten to the same answer either way. So if you remembered that, congratulations. If not, you may want to take note. That will help you out in the future. So flip it over, looking on to the next page. Example number 5. Find FY and YL. So this one they tell you is a 30, 60, 90. So anytime it's a 30, 60, 90, my rule is x radical 3, and 2x. So we always start and say this must be 2x, across from 30 is x, and across from 60 is x radical 3. So again, just like the last problem, we have a formula, x radical 3 equals 6. So we're going to divide by the radical. So x equals 6 divided by radical 3. So again, if you remember the shortcut, feel free to take it. If not, we got to rationalize it the long way. Multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. 6 times square root of 3 is 6 radical 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is radical 3 squared. So we're going to say 6 times radical 3 is what it is. Square and square root cancel each other out. So we're dividing by 3. And we will say that 6 divided by 3 is 2. We're going to say radical 3. If you remembered your shortcut, you could have said right here at this point, I could have said 6 divided by 3, because 3 is under my radical, times the radical 3, because that was my radical. 6 divided by 3 is 2, times the radical, 2 radical 3. So, to answer the question, it asks for the distance of Fy. We know that x is 2 radical 3. Fy is 2x. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, so we're going to say 4 radical 3. And they ask for YL. YL is just x, so that is 2 radical 3. So, my suggestion to you at this time is to pause the video and do your best on example number 6. All right, welcome back. Let's look at example number 6 together. As I look at this, I notice I have one number and I have two triangles. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the triangle that has a number. And that's all I'm going to worry about right now. And I will get back to the rest of it in a minute. I know it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So I know that this must be x radical 2. And I know that these sides must be x and x. So as I'm looking at it, this triangle I just drew, I know that if 8 radical 2 is my hypotenuse, and x radical 2 is that side that I labeled, if I cross out the radical 2, my x's must equal 8. So now that I know that, let's go back and apply that to our picture. LU must be 8. SU must be 8. So, now that we've done that, we've answered what LU is. LU is 8. And SU is 8. We still need to find SG and UG. So now that I've done that, let's go ahead and look at the second triangle that they gave me. Notice I'm redrawing a picture so I don't confuse myself. So as I'm looking at it, I know that this distance is still 8. No, I have a 90-degree angle. No, I have a 30-degree angle, which makes this a 60-degree angle. Well, across from 90 is going to be 2x. Across from 30 is going to be x, so x equals 8. And across from 60 would be x radical 3. So, we know x equals 8. So, 2x would equal 16. And x radical 3 would equal 8 radical 3. Now it's just a matter of going and putting it back together. X radical 3 would be UG. That would be 8 radical 3. So go ahead and write that in both places. 2x would be my hypotenuse, which up on my original picture would be SG. So 2x would be 16. Go ahead and write that in there for SG. And at this point, you found everything that they asked you to find. Notice it was not as difficult as it may look at first. I broke it up into first what I knew about, and then the second piece came very easy after I'd done what I already knew. Thank you for watching Coach Eichner's Math. Hope you have a great rest of your day.